Bride kicks a pregnant woman at her wedding. Then this happened. Don't miss this incredible story that will change how you see forgiveness forever. Like this video if you believe in second chances. But wait until you hear what happens in end. You won't believe the shocking truth that changes everything. Sarah thought her perfect wedding day would solve all her problems. She never imagined one angry moment would destroy everything she loved. And she definitely never expected the devastating secret that would be revealed 3 years later. Sarah Martinez stared at herself in the full-length mirror. The white silk dress hugged her curves perfectly. Every detail was exactly how she'd dreamed it would be since she was a little girl. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "This is my day, finally." "Sarah, you look absolutely stunning." Jessica burst through the door, tears already forming in her eyes. "David is going to die when he sees you." Sarah smiled, but something felt wrong in her stomach, a knot of anxiety that she couldn't shake. "Is everyone here?" Sarah asked, trying to sound casual. "Yes, everyone's here. Your parents are greeting guests, David's getting ready, and Emma just arrived with that gorgeous pregnancy glow. Girl, she looks amazing in that blue dress." There it was, the mention of Emma, Sarah's younger sister, 6 months pregnant and stealing attention wherever she went. Sarah felt her jaw clench. Great. Perfect. Jessica didn't notice the edge in Sarah's voice. "The photographer wants to start family pictures in 10 minutes. You ready?" "Ready as I'll ever be," Sarah muttered. She followed Jessica downstairs, her heart pounding harder with each step. This was supposed to be her moment, her day. The day everyone would finally focus on her instead of Emma. But as soon as Sarah stepped outside, she saw the scene that made her blood boil. Emma was sitting on a white garden bench, surrounded by at least 15 guests. Everyone was fawning over her pregnant belly, asking questions, taking pictures. Emma was glowing, laughing, being the center of attention, on Sarah's wedding day. "Oh my God, Emma, you look radiant," Aunt Linda gushed. "Pregnancy suits you so well." "When are you due, sweetheart?" Uncle Tom asked. 3 more months, Emma replied, her hand resting on her belly. "We're so excited. You're absolutely glowing. You look even more beautiful than the bride." Cousin Maria laughed. Sarah felt like someone had just punched her in the gut. More beautiful than the bride. On her wedding day. "Sarah," the photographer waved her over. "Let's get started with family photos." As they gathered for pictures, Sarah watched in horror as the photographer kept focusing on Emma. "Emma, can you turn slightly to the right? The light is hitting your pregnancy glow perfectly." "Maybe we should get some maternity shots while we're here," the photographer suggested. "Emma, you look absolutely stunning." Sarah's mother clapped her hands together. "Oh, that's a wonderful idea. We don't have any professional maternity photos yet." That was it. Sarah had reached her breaking point. "Actually," Sarah said through gritted teeth, "let's focus on the bride today." But even as they took the official wedding photos, Sarah could hear guests in the background still talking about Emma's pregnancy, her glow, how beautiful she looked. After the photos, Sarah grabbed Emma's arm. Hard. "Emma, I need to talk to you now." Emma looked surprised by the aggression in Sarah's voice. "Sarah, what's wrong? You seem really upset. What's wrong?" Sarah dragged Emma away from the crowd. "What's wrong?" But what Emma said next would change everything forever. "Sarah, you're scaring me," Emma said softly, trying to pull her arm free. "What's going on?" "What's going on is that this is my wedding day," Sarah screamed, not caring who heard her anymore. "My day, and you're stealing all the attention with your stupid pregnancy." Emma's eyes widened in shock. "Sarah, I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm just here to celebrate you and David. I love you." "You're such a liar." Sarah's voice was getting louder and more hysterical. "You always have to be the center of attention. You couldn't let me have just one day, could you?" "Sarah, please calm down. You're having pre-wedding stress. Let's just take some deep breaths and don't tell me to calm down." Sarah was screaming now, and several guests had stopped their conversations to stare. "I hate you. I hate your perfect pregnancy, and your perfect husband, and your perfect life." Emma put her hands protectively over her belly. "Sarah, you don't mean that. You're just nervous about the wedding." "I mean every word," Sarah spat. "Why do you get everything? Why is everyone always more excited about you than me?" That's when Emma said something that sent Sarah completely over the edge. Sarah, I know you're upset, but there are things you don't understand about my pregnancy. Things I haven't told anyone because I didn't want to ruin your special day. What things? Sarah demanded. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Sarah, the baby, there are complications. The doctor called this morning with bad news from the ultrasound, but Sarah was too consumed with rage to really hear what Emma was saying. I don't care about your complications. I don't care about your baby. I care about my wedding day that you've completely ruined. Without thinking, blinded by years of jealousy and resentment, Sarah pulled her foot back and kicked Emma as hard as she could in the stomach. Emma screamed and collapsed to the ground, clutching her belly. My baby! Emma cried out in agony. Oh God, my baby! Several guests came running. Sarah's mother dropped to her knees beside Emma. Sarah, what have you done? Her mother screamed. Blood began staining Emma's blue dress. Something was very, very wrong. Call 911 now! Sarah's father shouted, his face white with terror. David came running from the groom's area, still adjusting his tie. When he saw Emma on the ground bleeding, with Sarah standing over her, his face went completely pale. Sarah, what did you do? He whispered in horror. The paramedics arrived in what felt like seconds, but were probably minutes. As they worked on Emma, one of them looked up grimly. We need to get her to the hospital immediately. There's severe trauma to the abdomen. She's showing signs of premature labor. As they loaded Emma onto the stretcher, she looked at Sarah with tears streaming down her face. I loved you, Sarah. You were my hero my whole life. How could you hurt me and my innocent baby like this? Sarah watched the ambulance drive away and suddenly realized what she had done. David walked up to her, took off his wedding ring and placed it on the gift table. The wedding is off, Sarah, forever. But what Sarah didn't know was that Emma had been hiding a devastating secret about her pregnancy, a secret that would change everything when it was finally revealed. The beautiful wedding venue fell completely silent, except for the sound of Sarah's sobbing. Guests stood around in shocked groups, whispering and staring at Sarah like she was some kind of monster, which she realized she was. I can't believe she actually kicked her pregnant sister, someone whispered loudly enough for Sarah to hear. At her own wedding, another voice added in disgust. That poor baby. Emma could lose the baby because of this. Sarah's parents walked up to her, their faces filled with a mixture of rage, disappointment, and heartbreak that she'd never seen before. Sarah, we're going to the hospital to be with Emma, her father said, his voice colder than ice. Don't follow us, don't call us. What you did today is unforgivable. But Dad, I'm your daughter too. Sarah tried desperately. Right now, her mother interrupted, we have one daughter who might be dying in a hospital because of what you did. We'll deal with you later, if Emma and the baby survive. The guests began leaving quickly, many of them shooting disgusted looks at Sarah. Some were family friends she'd known her entire life. Congratulations, Sarah, her old college roommate said sarcastically as she walked past. You just destroyed your entire family for what? Jealousy? Jessica was one of the last people to approach Sarah. Jess, thank God you're still here, Sarah said desperately. Everyone hates me. Sarah, I can't even look at you right now, Jessica said quietly. You kicked your pregnant sister. At your own wedding, I don't know who you are anymore. And with that, Jessica walked away too. Sarah stood alone in her wedding dress, among the scattered rose petals, chairs, and abandoned gift boxes. The beautiful venue now looked like a crime scene. Her phone started buzzing with text messages, but they weren't congratulations. Saw the news, can't believe you did that to Emma. You're sick, Sarah, getting help. Emma better be okay or I'll never speak to you again. Sarah drove home in complete shock, still wearing her wedding dress. The news vans were already at her apartment building. Miss Martinez, can you comment on what happened at your wedding? Today, Sarah pushed through the reporters and locked herself in her apartment. She turned on the local news and saw her own face on the screen. Local bride attacks pregnant sister at wedding ceremony, the anchor read solemnly. The victim was rushed to regional hospital, where she remains in critical condition. Critical condition. Sarah felt like she was going to vomit. The next 3 days were the worst of Sarah's life. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. The story had gone viral on social media. Thousands of people were calling her a monster, a psychopath, an evil sister. Her job had put her on indefinite leave after receiving hundreds of angry phone calls. Former friends were posting on Facebook about how they always knew something was wrong with her. Finally, Jessica showed up at her door with a key because Sarah wouldn't answer. "Sarah, you look terrible," Jessica said, shocked by Sarah's appearance. "How's Emma? How's the baby? Please tell me they're okay," Sarah begged. Jessica's face was grim. "Sarah, Emma is on complete bed rest. The doctors are monitoring her around the clock. The baby started having complications after what you did." "What kind of complications?" "The baby might not make it, Sarah. They can't stop the contractions completely. Emma could go into premature labor at any time." Sarah felt like the floor was falling out from under her. "I have to go to the hospital. I have to see her and apologize." "Sarah, your family specifically said that if you show up at the hospital, they'll have security remove you. Emma needs to stay calm for the baby's sake." But Sarah couldn't live with herself another moment. She had to try to make this right somehow. That afternoon, she drove to the hospital with shaking hands. She found Emma's room and saw her sister lying in bed connected to monitors, looking pale and fragile. Sarah knocked softly. Her mother opened the door and immediately looked furious. "Sarah, you shouldn't be here." "Mum, please. I need to see Emma. I need to apologize." "You've done enough damage," her father said angrily, but Emma's weak voice came from the bed. "It's okay, let her come in." Sarah approached Emma's bedside slowly, afraid to get too close. "Emma, I'm so sorry," Sarah whispered. "I was jealous and angry, but that's no excuse. I might have killed your baby, and I'll never forgive myself." Emma looked at her with tired, sad eyes. "Sarah, I've been lying here thinking about what happened. The doctors say there's only a 50% chance I'll carry this baby to term because of what you did." Sarah started sobbing. "But," Emma continued, "I've also been thinking about forgiveness." Everyone in the room looked surprised. "Sarah, what you did was terrible, but I forgive you." Their parents looked shocked. "Emma, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," Emma said firmly. "Not for Sarah's sake, but for mine and my baby's sake. I refuse to raise my child in a family filled with hatred." Sarah could hardly believe what she was hearing. "However," Emma continued, "forgiveness doesn't mean there are no consequences. You need to prove that you've changed, Sarah, and you need to know that there are things about my pregnancy that I haven't told anyone. Things that might change how you feel about what you did." But before Emma could reveal her secret, alarms started going off on the monitors, and nurses came rushing in. "She's going into labor," a nurse shouted. "Get the doctor now." As Emma was rushed to emergency surgery, she grabbed Sarah's hand. "Sarah, if something happens to me or the baby, I need you to know the truth about my pregnancy. Ask Rebecca Chen. She was at your wedding. She knows." And then Emma was gone, leaving Sarah with a terrifying question. What secret was Emma hiding about her pregnancy? Sarah spent 8 agonizing hours in the hospital waiting room during Emma's emergency surgery. Her parents wouldn't speak to her, but they didn't ask her to leave either. Finally, the doctor emerged from the operating room. "The baby is alive," he announced. "She's very small, at only 4 pounds, but she's breathing on her own. Emma is stable but weak. It was a difficult delivery." Sarah collapsed in relief, but the doctor wasn't finished. "However, there's something you need to know. The trauma to Emma's uterus was severe. This will likely be her only pregnancy. The damage makes future pregnancies extremely risky." Sarah felt like someone had stabbed her in the heart. Not only had she almost killed Emma and her baby, but she had also stolen Emma's chance to have more children. When they were finally allowed to see Emma, she was holding her tiny daughter. "Her name is Grace," Emma said softly. "She represents God's grace in our lives." "Emma, I'm so sorry about you not being able to have more children. I took that away from you too," Sarah whispered. "Would you like to hold your niece?" Emma asked gently. As Sarah held baby Grace for the first time, she felt a love she'd never experienced. But she also remembered Emma's words before the surgery. "Emma, before you went into labor, You said there were things about your pregnancy I didn't know. You mentioned Rebecca Chen. Emma's expression changed. Sarah, that conversation needs to wait. You've been through enough trauma for one day. No, Emma, I need to know. What secret have you been keeping? Emma looked at their parents, then back at Sarah. Sarah, I'll tell you, but not here and not now. Come to my house next week when I'm released from the hospital. But first, I want you to call Rebecca Chen and ask her what she heard at your wedding before the incident happened. Sarah drove home with more questions than answers. Who was Rebecca Chen and what did she know? That night, Sarah looked through her wedding guest list and found Rebecca's number. Rebecca had been David's cousin's friend, someone Sarah barely knew. Hello, Rebecca. This is Sarah Martinez. I know this is strange, but Emma told me to call you about something you heard at my wedding. There was a long pause. Sarah, I was wondering when this conversation would happen, Rebecca said quietly. Can we meet in person? What I have to tell you isn't something I can say over the phone. What's this about, Rebecca? It's about Emma's pregnancy, Sarah. About what she was going through that day that you didn't know about. Sarah's heart started racing. What do you mean? Sarah, Emma was crying at your wedding. Before you even approached her, she was crying and talking to your aunt about something terrible. What was she crying about? I think we need to meet face to face. Can you come to the coffee shop on Main Street tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Sarah agreed but spent the entire night awake, wondering what Rebecca could possibly know. The next afternoon, Sarah arrived at the coffee shop to find Rebecca already waiting at a corner table, looking nervous. Thank you for meeting me, Rebecca said. Sarah, I need you to promise you'll let me tell the whole story before you react. Okay, just please tell me what this is about. Rebecca took a deep breath. Sarah, about an hour before you kicked Emma, I was sitting close enough to hear her conversation with your Aunt Linda. Emma was crying, and she told your aunt something that broke my heart. What did she tell her? Emma said that her doctor had called her that morning with devastating news about the baby. Sarah felt her blood turn cold. What kind of news? The ultrasound had shown that the baby had a severe heart defect. The doctor told Emma there was less than a 30% chance the baby would survive to full term. Sarah stared at Rebecca in complete shock. That's impossible. Grace was born perfectly healthy. That's exactly why I needed to talk to you, Rebecca continued. Sarah, I'm a nurse who specializes in high-risk pregnancies. What happened to Grace is extremely rare, but I've seen it before. What do you mean? Sometimes when a baby with a severe heart defect is delivered prematurely due to trauma, the shock to the baby's system can actually cause the heart defect to correct itself naturally. Sarah felt like the room was spinning. Are you saying that my kicking Emma? I'm saying that your kick, as horrible as it was, might have accidentally saved Grace's life. Sarah couldn't breathe. But why didn't Emma tell me this? Because she knew that if you found out the baby was already in danger, you would blame yourself even more. She knew you would torture yourself, wondering what would have happened if you had known the truth. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. Emma knew her baby might die, and I attacked her anyway. There's more, Sarah, Rebecca said gently. Emma also told your aunt that she had been struggling with severe depression throughout her pregnancy. She said she had been having thoughts about not wanting to live anymore. Sarah felt like she was going to be sick. What? Emma told your aunt that she had been planning to hurt herself after your wedding. She felt so worthless and depressed that she thought everyone would be better off without her. Sarah started crying uncontrollably. So when I kicked her? When you kicked her, you weren't just attacking a pregnant woman with a sick baby. You were attacking your sister who was suicidal and trying to protect everyone else from knowing how much pain she was in. But Rebecca had one more devastating revelation that would change everything Sarah thought she knew about that day. There's something else, Sarah, Rebecca said, her voice barely above a whisper. Something that Emma doesn't even know I overheard. I don't think I can handle anything else, Sarah said, her hands shaking. You need to hear this. After Emma told your aunt about the baby's heart defect and her depression, she said something that will blow your mind. Sarah waited, terrified. Of what came next? Emma told your aunt that the doctors had given her two options. She could carry the baby to full term, knowing it would likely die shortly after birth, or she could terminate the pregnancy to spare the baby suffering. "Oh, my God," Sarah breathed. "Emma told your aunt that she had decided to terminate the pregnancy after your wedding. She didn't want to ruin your special day with the news, so she was going to wait until Monday to have the procedure." Sarah felt like the world was collapsing around her. "Are you telling me that if I hadn't kicked Emma, she would have?" "She would have terminated the pregnancy, Sarah. Grace would never have been born." Sarah sat in stunned silence for several minutes. "So my terrible, unforgivable action accidentally saved Grace in two ways," Sarah finally whispered. "It saved her from the heart defect, and it saved her from being terminated." "That's exactly what I'm telling you," Rebecca confirmed. "Your kick caused Emma to go into premature labor, which corrected the heart defect and made termination impossible." "But Emma has never told me any of this," Sarah said, confused. "Because Emma doesn't know that I heard that part of the conversation. She doesn't know that I know she was planning to terminate the pregnancy." Sarah felt overwhelmed. "Rebecca, why are you telling me this now? Because I've been following your story for the past year. I've seen how much you've changed, how guilty you feel, how you've dedicated your life to making amends. I thought you deserved to know the full truth." "Does this mean that everything happened for a reason?" Sarah asked desperately. "I don't know about that," Rebecca said thoughtfully. "What I do know is that sometimes terrible actions can have unexpected consequences. Your action was still wrong, Sarah, but the outcome was miraculous." Sarah drove to Emma's house in a daze, her mind reeling from everything Rebecca had told her. When she arrived, Emma was in the nursery with Grace, who was now 6 months old and thriving. "Emma, I talked to Rebecca," Sarah said without preamble. Emma's face went pale. "What? Did she tell you?" "She told me about Grace's heart defect. She told me that you were planning to terminate the pregnancy. She told me about your depression and suicidal thoughts." Emma set Grace in her crib and turned to face Sarah. "How much did Rebecca hear?" Emma asked quietly. "Everything, Emma. She heard everything." Emma sat down heavily in the rocking chair. "I was hoping this conversation would never need to happen. Emma, why didn't you tell me that Grace was already in danger when I kicked you?" "Because it wouldn't have changed what you did, Sarah. Your actions were still motivated by jealousy and anger, not by love or concern for me." "But Emma, don't you see? If I had known about the heart defect, about your depression, about your plans to terminate, would it have changed anything?" Emma asked pointedly. "You were so consumed with jealousy that day that I don't think anything would have stopped you." Sarah realized Emma was right. Her anger hadn't been about Emma's situation. It had been about her own insecurities. "But Emma, the fact remains that my horrible action accidentally saved Grace's life twice." "Yes," Emma said simply. "It did. So what does that mean? Does that make what I did okay?" "No, Sarah. What you did will never be okay. But sometimes God can take our worst moments and create miracles from them." Emma stood up and looked directly at Sarah. "Sarah, there's something else I need to tell you, something I've never told anyone." "What now?" Sarah asked, not sure she could handle another revelation. "The reason I forgave you so quickly wasn't just because I wanted to model forgiveness for Grace." "Then why?" "Because when I was lying in that hospital bed, terrified that I might lose my baby, I realized something important." Emma paused and took Sarah's hands. "I realized that losing you would have been worse than losing the baby. I realized that I loved you more than I was angry at you. And I realized that if Grace survived, I wanted her to grow up knowing that her aunt was capable of incredible change." Sarah started crying again. "Emma, you are the most amazing person I've ever known." "No, Sarah, we're both amazing. You were brave enough to face what you had done and completely change your life. Most people would have just made excuses." But Emma had one more surprise that would change Sarah's life forever. "Sarah, there's something else. Michael called me yesterday." "Michael?" Sarah was confused. She had been dating Michael for 6 months, but why would he call Emma? "He asked for my permission to propose to you." Sarah's mouth fell open in shock. "He said he wanted our family's blessing before he asked you to marry him. He said he's fallen in love with the woman you've become. Emma, I had no idea he was thinking about marriage, so he told me that he loves you not despite your past, but because of how you've grown from it. Sarah felt overwhelmed with gratitude and hope. After losing her first chance at marriage because of jealousy and anger, she was being given a second chance with someone who knew her story and loved her anyway. "Do you think I deserve this happiness?" Sarah asked. "Sarah, I think you've earned it. You've spent 2 years proving that people can change." But just as Sarah was beginning to feel hopeful about her future, Emma revealed one final secret that would test everything Sarah thought she understood about forgiveness and redemption. "Sarah, there's one more thing I need to tell you before Michael proposes," Emma said, her expression becoming serious. "What is it?" Sarah asked, though part of her was afraid to know. "It's about my heart condition." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What heart condition?" "I've been seeing a cardiologist for the past 6 months. The trauma from Grace's premature birth triggered a condition called peripartum cardiomyopathy." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked, terrified. "It means my heart was damaged during the delivery. It's not functioning at full capacity anymore." Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. "Is it serious?" "It can be. With medication and careful monitoring, many women live normal lives, but in some cases it can progress to complete heart failure." "Emma, why didn't you tell me this sooner?" Sarah asked, tears already forming. "Because I knew you would blame yourself even more than you already do. And because I wanted to see if the condition would improve before I worried everyone." "Has it improved?" Emma hesitated. "Not as much as the doctors hoped. Sarah, there's a chance that I might need a heart transplant in the future." Sarah felt like the room was spinning. "No, Emma, no, I can't have caused this too." "Sarah, listen to me," Emma said firmly. "The doctors say this condition can develop after any difficult pregnancy. We don't know for sure that it was caused by the trauma from your kick." "But it probably was," Sarah said, sobbing now. "Maybe. But Sarah, even if it was, I need you to understand something." Emma took Sarah's hands and looked directly into her eyes. "If I only have a few years left, I don't want to spend them watching you destroy yourself with guilt. I want to spend them watching you live the beautiful life you've built." "Don't talk like that," Sarah said desperately. "You're going to be fine. Grace needs her mother." "I hope so, but Sarah, if something happens to me, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll adopt Grace and raise her as your own. Promise me you'll tell her that her mother believed in forgiveness and second chances. Promise me you'll never let guilt rob her of having the amazing aunt I know you are." "Emma, nothing is going to happen to you," Sarah insisted. "Maybe not, but I need that promise, Sarah." "I promise," Sarah whispered. A week later, Michael proposed to Sarah exactly where Rebecca had told her he would, at the small cafe where Sarah had first told him her whole story. "Sarah," Michael said, getting down on one knee, "you are the bravest person I know. Not because you never made mistakes, but because you faced your worst mistake and became a better person because of it." He pulled out a ring. "Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life loving the incredible woman you've become?" "Yes," Sarah said through tears of joy and sorrow. "Yes, I'll marry you. I'll marry you." But even in her happiness, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Emma's heart condition. They planned a small, intimate wedding at Emma's house. Sarah wore a simple white dress, and Emma stood beside her as matron of honor, holding Grace while 2-year-old Hope scattered flower petals. During the ceremony, Sarah looked at Emma and noticed that she seemed tired and pale, but Emma smiled and nodded encouragingly. After the ceremony, Emma asked for everyone's attention. "I want to say something about my sister Sarah," Emma began. 3 years ago, Sarah made a terrible mistake, but her response to that mistake has been the most inspiring thing I've ever witnessed." Emma's voice grew stronger as she continued. "Sarah taught me that forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about believing in someone's capacity to change, and Sarah has changed completely." But then Emma's expression became more serious. "I also want everyone to know that Sarah's story isn't just about her transformation. It's about how one person's change can ripple out and affect many lives." Emma looked directly at Sarah. "Because Sarah changed, She started a blog that has helped thousands of women deal with their own anger and jealousy. Because Sarah changed, she became an incredible aunt to my children. And because Sarah changed, she met Michael, who makes her happier than I've ever seen her. Emma paused and her voice became emotional. Sarah, your worst moment led to some of the most beautiful moments in our family's history. That's the power of forgiveness and redemption. As Emma finished speaking, Sarah noticed that Emma was breathing heavily and seemed unsteady on her feet. "Emma, are you okay?" Sarah asked quietly. "I'm just tired," Emma replied. "It's been a long day." But later that evening, as the reception was winding down, Emma collapsed. "Call 911!" Michael shouted, catching Emma as she fell. As the paramedics worked on Emma, she grabbed Sarah's hand weakly. "Sarah," Emma whispered, "remember your promise. Take care of Grace and Hope. Tell them about forgiveness." "Emma, you're going to be fine," Sarah insisted, but she could see the fear in the paramedics' eyes. At the hospital, the doctors delivered devastating news. Emma's heart condition has progressed more rapidly than we expected. She's going to need a heart transplant, and even then, her chances aren't great. Sarah felt like her world was ending all over again, but what happened next would either destroy Sarah completely or prove that her transformation was real. Emma spent the next month in the cardiac intensive care unit, waiting for a heart transplant. Sarah barely left her bedside, taking care of Grace and Hope while watching Emma grow weaker each day. "Sarah," Emma said during one of her more alert moments, "I need to tell you something important." "What is it?" Sarah asked, holding Emma's frail hand. "I've been taken off the heart transplant list." Sarah felt like someone had punched her. "What? Why?" "My condition has progressed too far. The doctors don't think my body could handle the surgery now." "No, Emma. There has to be something we can do," Sarah said desperately. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me. I don't have much time left." "Don't say that. I need you to know that these past 3 years, watching you become the person you are now, have been the best years of my life." Emma's voice was weak but determined. "When you kicked me at your wedding, I thought my life was over. But actually, it was just beginning. Because that's when I learned what real love and forgiveness could do." Sarah was crying uncontrollably now. "Sarah, there's something I never told you about why I really forgave you so quickly." "What?" "The night after you kicked me, when I was lying in that hospital bed thinking I might lose my baby, I had a realization." Emma paused to catch her breath. "I realized that I had been just as jealous of you as you were of me." Sarah looked up in shock. "What do you mean?" "I was jealous of your independence, your career, your freedom. I was jealous that you were getting married while I felt trapped by an unplanned pregnancy with a sick baby." "Emma, I had no idea. When you kicked me, I realized that jealousy had been poisoning both of us, and I decided that if my baby survived, I wanted to break that cycle." Emma squeezed Sarah's hand with what little strength she had left. "Sarah, forgiving you saved me just as much as it saved you." The next morning, Sarah arrived at the hospital to find Emma unconscious. The doctors said it was only a matter of hours now. Sarah sat beside Emma's bed, holding her hand and talking to her unconscious sister. "Emma, I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to know that you saved my life. You turned me from a monster into a person capable of love." Sarah's voice broke as she continued. "I promise I'll take care of Grace and Hope. I promise I'll tell them about their amazing mother who taught us all about forgiveness." Just then, Grace and Hope came running into the room with Sarah's parents. "Aunt Sarah, is Mommy sleeping?" 3-year-old Grace asked. "Yes, sweetheart. Mommy is very tired," Sarah managed to say. "When will she wake up?" Hope asked innocently. Sarah looked at her parents, not knowing how to answer. That's when something miraculous happened. Emma's eyes fluttered open. "Mommy!" Grace shouted with joy. "My babies!" Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. Emma looked at Sarah with eyes full of love and peace. "Sarah, take care of my girls. Tell them that love is stronger than anything." "Emma, don't leave us," Sarah begged. "I'm not leaving," Emma smiled weakly. "I'll always be with you. Every time you choose forgiveness over anger, every time you choose love over jealousy, I'll be there." Emma looked at Grace and Hope. Be good girls for Aunt Sarah. She loves you so much. And then, peacefully, with her family surrounding her, Emma closed her eyes for the last time. Sarah felt like her heart had been ripped from her chest. The sister who had saved her life with forgiveness was gone. At Emma's funeral, hundreds of people came to pay their respects. Many of them were women who had read Sarah's blog and been inspired by Emma's story of forgiveness. During the eulogy, Sarah stood up to speak. Emma was the bravest person I ever knew, Sarah began, her voice shaking. Not because she faced death with courage, though she did, but because she faced hatred with love. Sarah looked out at the crowd of people whose lives had been touched by Emma's story. 3 years ago, I was consumed by jealousy. I kicked my pregnant sister at my own wedding, nearly killing her and her baby. By all rights, Emma should have hated me forever. Sarah's voice grew stronger. But Emma chose to forgive me instead, and that choice didn't just save my life, it saved thousands of lives. Every woman who has read our story and chosen forgiveness over revenge, every family that has healed from conflict, every person who has learned that people can change, they were all touched by Emma's courage. Sarah looked at Grace and Hope, sitting in the front row with her parents. Emma's legacy isn't her death, it's the love and forgiveness that will live on through all of us. After the funeral, Sarah sat in Emma's living room with Grace and Hope, looking through photo albums. Aunt Sarah, Grace said seriously, Mommy said you used to be sad and angry, but then you became happy and kind. How did you change? Sarah thought carefully about how to explain such a complex story to a 4-year-old. Well, Grace, I made some bad choices because I was jealous. I hurt your mommy, and I felt terrible about it. What's jealous? Hope asked. Jealous is when you're angry about what other people have instead of being happy for them. That sounds mean, Grace said. It was mean. But your mommy taught me something very important. What? She taught me that when someone hurts you, you can choose to help them become better instead of staying angry. That's called forgiveness. Grace thought about this for a moment. Mommy was really good at forgiving, wasn't she? Yes, sweetheart, your mommy was the best at forgiving. Aunt Sarah, Hope said, climbing into Sarah's lap, will you teach us how to forgive like Mommy did? Sarah hugged both girls tightly, tears streaming down her face. Yes, my loves, I'll teach you everything your mommy taught me about love and forgiveness. As Sarah tucked the girls into bed that night, their first night as her daughters, Grace asked one more question. Aunt Sarah, do you think Mommy is proud of who you became? Sarah smiled through her tears. I think your mommy is very proud, and I promise to spend every day for the rest of my life making sure she stays proud. The woman who had once kicked her pregnant sister in a moment of jealous rage was gone forever. In her place was a mother who would teach 2 little girls that love is always stronger than anger, and that forgiveness can transform even the most broken hearts. Emma's final gift to Sarah wasn't just forgiveness. It was the chance to prove that redemption is real, that people can change completely, and that sometimes our worst moments can lead to our most beautiful lives. As Sarah turned off the lights and looked at Grace and Hope sleeping peacefully, she whispered a promise to Emma. I'll make sure they know that their mother was a hero who saved not just my life, but thousands of lives with the power of forgiveness, and I'll make sure they grow up knowing that love always wins. The bride, who had once destroyed her wedding day with an act of violence, had become a mother who would build her daughters' futures with acts of love. And Emma's legacy of forgiveness would live on forever.